Ladies and gentlemen, today's episode is brought to you by our boys at Podbean, and this episode is fully Canadian. This episode is also brought to you by the letter G, as in the G in lasagna that moves real silent, and it's telling you to silently go if you feel that this ain't for you. So if you don't like black people and you don't like black people talk about hockey, you can move like the G in lasagna and silently off. Thank you. Now to our episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Third Intermission podcast. This is your boy Dave signing on for this lovely, snowy, unterrible day. Of course, we got a swift buck worth of snow out here in Ontario right now. It's moving crazy, but you know what? We keep moving as we always do. You can always find us on the socials at Toronto Third, both on Twitter and on Instagram. You can also find us on Blue Sky as well. And you can listen to us and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast from. That includes Google, Apple, Spotify, our friends at Podbean, and iHeartRadio. It's a two-man show today. We got the right hand of the king himself, a.k.a. Avery Lewis McDougall, coming to you live from Edmonton, Alberta. What's going on with you, Avery?
Not much, Dave. Getting ready for the takeover tour game, Toronto and Ottawa at Rogers Place, and then, but beforehand, recovering from Canada, USA, foreign nations face-off. Yes, the Americans did win 3-1, but boy almighty, that opening 10 seconds was something else, Dave.
Oh my God! No, 2-2s. That's how you like. If you were a casual hockey fan, or even a non-casual at this point, or even just a first timer, that is the best way. That is the best way for you to get involved into a hockey game. I am not capping when I say this. Like, if you were watching hockey for the first time and you see three squabble ups, and within 10 seconds, you know you're watching a blessed game right then and there. And like as a ball fan, I will say this right now. All-Star Weekend was trash compared to the Four Nations game last night. Like, the only good thing about it was the dunk competition, but even the dunk competition was just like it. You couldn't take it away from what was going on in Montreal. Like like you have, considering the political landscape right now, it's like you have one of the best rivalries in all of sport just basically playing itself out, and it's just writing itself another chapter between the Mandem up here and the crackheads down south, with the exception of Austin Matthews.
That was, and again, this is the first best on best game of Canada US since 2016, and watching again, this is a game in which you had the Kachuk brothers and JT Miller going up against you had Colin Parenko against Sam Bennett and against Brandon Hagel, and to me that shows one, yes. Funny thing is that my big thing with this tournament was for months was me thinking, oh, would these guys go full out because it's a week-long tournament? And the bigger thing was getting back to your roster for a playoff push. Well, I admit, I'll eat some crow. I was wrong in that one because the pride of playing for your nation overtook it. Because you had guys, I mean, we've seen all tournament long. We've seen guys on the same NHL team chirping each other, hitting each other. We have seen, once again, that in this tournament, the country pride has overtaken the team pride in a major way.
It really has. It genuinely has. And like, honestly, no disrespect to Austin, I feel bad for the dude, only because of the fact that he's wearing stars and stripes right now. If you're wearing a Leafs jersey, then it's like, you know what, we rate the dude. But the problem is, it's like when you have the political tension that's going on between Canada and the United States right now, if you were to throw, say, something like last night's hockey or Saturday night's hockey game in the forefront, that just literally just takes things and it exponentially blows it out of the water. Like, you've got Canadian fans heavily and, quite frankly, rightly booing the American national anthem. Mm-hmm. You've got American politicians crying and basically beating off to the fact that, Canadians are being rude to them, and it's justifying the whole rhetoric of the whole quote-unquote 51st state nonsense. And then on top of that, it's like you got Canadians basically uniting themselves on an armed front at this point at like every sporting event because it's not even just hockey games; it's also Raptors games that Canadians are starting to boo the American national anthem. Like I'm scared for baseball season at this point because baseball is an American pastime.
I
Like
mean,
the Jays are like the only Canadian team out there, but like like they're Canadian fans in droves. Like I feel bad for Seattle right now because like Canadians are going to invade the living shit out of Seattle when the Jays come into town, and it's like it's going to be a nightmare for them. And I'm all for it.
well,
I'm
also too,
genuinely all for it.
also too MLS. You got MLS starting up
Oh yes, that's right.
week and a half. You got TFC, Montreal, and Whitecaps. So that'll be fun.
Like the Nefas has been the Nefas has been thrown at this point, and it's only going to continually get thrown. Like if there was a Canadian team that wants to galvanize themselves to a potential Stanley Cup run, this is the exact time to do it. This is the genuine exact time to do it. But obviously, we're going to touch on that, say, potentially next week. Just right now, focusing on Four Nations face-off and everything. Until last night, um, Canada was like a predominant favorite, and then of course when the Americans slapped Finland 6-1, like you literally sat there and you saw an absolute dismantling of the Finns as it was, and like I mentioned this in our group chat, like.
The Americans, you're right. The Americans had a solid game against Finland, and the
Mm-hmm.
big thing for the Americans watching this game against Canada, Dave, was just watching how the Americans were denying a Canadian chance in the slot at their
Yeah.
sticks. And one thing that just frustrated me to no end was watching Canada. The breakouts were not clean at all. This
Mm-hmm.
was a very disjointed team, and
Mm-hmm.
outside the McDavid goal, the forwards just weren't on the same page. There was no chemistry among anyone.
No, like I mean, like Nathan McKinnon couldn't get himself going. Mitch Marner couldn't get himself going. Perriego, like as great as he was, as like say, you know, the quintessential guy to like literally help, like say, propel Canada to like literally have the same amount of energy. Same with Brandon Hagel, and who was the other one that got into a fight last night?
Sam Bennett.
Yeah, Sam Bennett. Like, and Sam Bennett is an actual leader in Florida. The fact that you also couldn't get Sam Reinhart going as well, like it was outright insane. Like Crosby couldn't like literally set up for most of the game. Like the Americans had like basically collapsed, like running a five, like basically running a man on man defense in the defensive zone all night, and like they essentially neutralized like Canada's scoring punch. They they just they took out Canada's speed. They took out Canada's finesse. Like the Canadians had to use their size in this game, and they did not utilize it because like the Americans were a little bit faster and a little bit smoother with their play, and like they executed very well. Like Jake Gensel and Jake Gensel scoring, and then of course Dylan Larkin scoring as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really effectively took Canada out of their momentum, and like that McDavid goal sent Montreal into a frenzy, and it's just like you know that was the tone you should have set early, and you should have kept on the pressure. But the fact that the Americans adjusted very well really shows that like you know what, like hey, like we took this game for granted. Like as John, if you're John Cooper right now, like you literally got to say like we took this for granted. And of course, Connor going on record during post game saying like, okay, you know what, like yo, you got us today. We'll see you on Thursday. Like make sure you square up for Thursday because we're coming back and we're knocking you right in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Like it really sets the tone for Monday. Because if Canada loses to Finland, Finland's in the final. Or if Sweden beats the Americans and the Americans just take it easy, be like, okay, you know what? Like it'll be a USA Sweden final. And technically speaking, like Canada will have missed an opportunity to actually go do some damage and get some retribution. And right now, like as a Canadian hockey fan, like you do not want to see that in any which way. Like
Yeah.
the only fitting way this ends, and this is for cinematic purposes, but like the only fitting way this ends is if Canada and the United States squares off in Boston on Thursday night. No other alternative. If it were like say a Sweden Finland final, no problem with it. But considering the tensions that are going on right now, like it has to be Canada US. I'm not joking when I say that.
Yeah, and that's the matchup that we all know the networks want, the league wants. A lot of people want to see the rematch. You want to see that part too. But what I think
Mm-hmm.
now with Canada playing Finland now on the Monday game, a must-win game for the Canadians. One thing
Mm-hmm.
too, and for both sides actually, for both teams, it must win. But looking at this, looking at this game now, I firmly believe you have to go to Aiden Hill in net. Jordan Bennington came into this tournament as a goaltender who, in the past couple of years, has struggled to be a goalie with a above 900 save percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Let in two goals he should have had, and now in a do or die game, if you're John Cooper, you need to make the switch to Aiden Hill, a man who was my goalie number one coming into the tournament to start. And quite frankly, if you're talking about the goaltenders on this roster, I
Mm-hmm.
would not have had Jordan Bennington on this roster at all. I'm sorry, I would not have picked Bennington to be on my roster.
I feel like the Sweden game was a really good test for him. And you know what? Like after letting in a couple softies, after letting in like the third goal against Sweden, like it kind of showed that like Canada got lucky during the Sweden game back on Thursday. Looking at everything now, it's like you should have put Aiden Hill in that, like legit from the jump, because it's like you have a great matchup between him and Connor Hellebuck. Connor was standing on his head all game long last night, and I'm I'm gonna be completely honest. Like the American goaltending was great, but like this is also reminiscent of like say 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver. Canada lost to the Americans in the round robin
Mm-hmm.
of the Olympic tournament and everything. We were questioning goaltending because it was like what? It was like Martin Brodeur in between the pipes. Uh,
Yeah. Brodeur, and then he switched to Luongo.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's deja vu all over again. But will lightning strike twice 15 years later? And it's like I feel like at that particular point, like the stat on this was crazy, but like until Saturday, it was like Crosby was 26-0
Mm-hmm.
as captain for the Canadian program. It was until that particular moment that like you know that particular moment Saturday where they lost to the Americans 3-1. Like Crosby had a 26 game winning streak as captain of the Canadian program, and what is he going to say? What would he have said? What do you think he would have said given the loss? It's like okay, like do you lock in? Do you just and to quote Ted Lasso, do you be a goldfish and just say you know what? Forget this game. Let's do business on Monday. Go into Boston, break some American hearts, and then get on the plane and tell Trump to go fuck himself. Like, like I mean that's extreme, but I'm probably sure that's what was probably said in the locker room, right?
Yeah, behind closed doors was probably that behind closed doors, but
Yeah.
I still saw in the pressers post game in front of the cameras, you still see that level of confidence. I mean, we saw the level of confidence from McDavid. I mean, this is the man. This is the
Mm-hmm.
man whose team was facing an 0-3 deficit and kept on facing the media saying, "No, we're going to come back. We're going to drain back to Alberta when they were down three
He kept
one."
it pushing.
Yeah.
He kept it
So
pushing.
if you're a Canadian, it's hard to not believe Connor McDavid when he says we're going to be back here again on Thursday. Like it's you, he's a guy where when he speaks in that aspect, you want to
Mm-hmm.
follow him and you want to believe Connor McDavid in that aspect when he speaks.
No, I fully agree with that. And you know what? Like, all stupidness aside, this has been effectively like one of those poignant moments in Canadian hockey history right now because it's like there are only so many defining moments against certain countries that Canada has actually had a defining moment with, and the United States is no exception. In fact, it's like one of the biggest hockey stories in all like in the history of the sport within like what say it's 200-year history, 200 plus year history, give or take.
Yeah, are we? Yeah, about that. Yeah, if you want to go back to other iterations of
Yeah.
hockey, yeah,
You know,
you're on that.
yeah, so it's like, or sorry, not 200, like say 150-year history, because it's like you've only like until like say I guess the inception of like color television and everything like Canada USA relations, well, Canada USA ice relations, as I'm going to call it, hasn't really been that poignant until like what, maybe the 50s when the Americans started taking hockey seriously. And it didn't start spiking until the 80s when the Americans had won at Lake Placid and Canada had last won their Olympic gold in 1952.
Mhm.
And then of course like things just started spiking and then the inception of NHL players and the World Juniors like Canada hadn't faced the Americans until like 1997 in the gold medal game, and like that's the only time Canada's beaten the Americans at the World Juniors in a gold medal game in the last say almost 30 years. Ever since then, the American program has exponentially just grown, and like they've won four straight games against Canadian, four straight games against the gold medal games against Canadians in the World Juniors. Look at the women's program, Canada and the United States. That has been the biggest marquee matchup of all of women's hockey because it's always been Canada and the United States. It's rarely been Canada and anybody else, and
Yeah,
it's insane. And now like the men's program is finally starting to see it spike back up again, especially after 2010. And then, of course, the World Championships. Like Canada and the United States have not faced each other, like you said, since 2016. And now that we officially have like, well, now that we officially have like, say, a Team Canada, Team USA rivalry game for like the first time in almost 10 years, it's not only refreshing, but it's like, it kind of feels like, we've been deprived of this. And now it's like this whole, well, sorry, now that you're adding like, say, whatever was going on politically in this situation to the mix, it's like, okay, this is a perfect storm for this whole situation, and
yeah,
it's a lot of fun, but it's also it's helping unite the country in a way that like we have never seen in 15 years. Like in order for you to unite a country that's like literally like the nicest people in the world and like basically turn them into like bloodthirsty monsters, like you really have to piss us off. And
yeah,
it's like here, like this is a running joke, but like it's absolutely true in this point. It's like you really have to piss us off in order to get Quebec to say like, "Yo, we don't want to separate. We basically want to throw hands with. We want to throw hands with the English speaking motherfuckers." Like it's that bad at this point. Like when you have Quebec pissed off and say like, "Yo, we're siding with the perpetrators at this point," you best believe hands are being thrown at this point. Like,
yeah. Like that Bell Center, we heard the booing, and then we heard "Oh Canada" in the Bell Center rocking. Like that is some. Yeah, they found the clown show. We know who we were talking about. The clown show
mhm,
unified the country in ways we have not seen when it comes to hockey in a long in hockey and society up here in a long time. And now this tournament here, so now we know. In
mhm,
terms of we mentioned off here, Dave, how it's important to keep these tournaments going and Olympic play. So what we know now is that there's going to be again the Olympics next year in Italy, Olympic play, and the rotation is going to be now Olympics 2026, World Cup of Hockey in
in
2028,
2028.
then Olympics again in 2030 in the French Alps, and then
Mhm,
a World Cup in 2032. Now, it is imperative, and we've heard it before. We've heard it before in NHL wanting that proper synchronization of the World Cup and Olympics before. It happened back
mhm,
in 2016. They talked about it back in 2018. The whoever is in charge of this league in 4, 5, 6 years, whenever Bettman and Daly are gone, you
mhm.
have to ensure that that timeline of following 26, 28, 30, 32 happens. No more, oops, it didn't happen. No more, oops, we couldn't get a deal done. No more hiccups, no more blips. You have to be consistent with this rotation for the growth of the sport and the growth of your league.
I fully agree with that, and it's like you've got to get not only a business minded perspective, but you also need a hockey minded perspective, and it's not just a regularly hockey minded perspective. You need a fresh hockey minded perspective that includes having minorities in the game, and
Yes.
you need to have that prevalent whenever Bettman and Daly both step down. And it's like, could you have a Jerome McGinley there? Could you have a PK Subban there? You never know. But like you need to have fresh voices and you need to have a very intelligent mind in order to be able to not only grow the game, but also make sure that the game is extremely inexpensive enough to make sure that, like, say, hey, let's keep hockey going. Let's keep it fresh. Let's keep it, affordable, and let's find a way to make sure that like we don't die off and become like sport number 7 in North America at this point. Because like let's
Yeah.
be honest, like soccer's taking over, basketball's taking over. You have football in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Have basketball like heavily prevalent. You have baseball. You
Yep.
now have golf, and you now have F1 overtaking a lot of things. And now it's like you have hockey basically on the back burner because of the fact that A, it's so expensive. B, there's basically nobody who, well, I'm basically going to quote Kendrick in this situation. They're not like us in this situation, you know? And unfortunately, like you cannot appeal to that. But now that like now with this whole situation here, it's like this is a good time to strike while the iron's hot for the sport of hockey in general. But you have to find a way to make sure that like not only are you appealing to the right people, but you're also making sure that like you can get the BS out of the game.
Yeah, because we should be sitting here, when this show is in year 5 of a TV deal on either TNT or TSN or whatever,
Yeah.
we should be sitting here in 2032, in our mansion. Well, we'll see about the mansion, but we should be sitting here in 2032 saying, "Wow, look at what the Four Nations face off kicked off back in 2025."
Mm-hmm. No, I fully agree. And you know what? Like honestly, I'm down with the whole like look like we're sitting in our mansion, two twos like we're having a cookout, like somebody's making oxtail in the kitchen, and then like jerk chicken, there's some jerk chicken in the backyard where like everyone's out of the pool. It's like a combination of like say a very formal like pool party and easy ease wet and wild party, but like
Yeah, what?
like there's a healthy balance between the two. But in any event, like if we can have hockey parties like that, that'd be great. But at the end of the day, it looks like this, or sorry, it goes like this. We have a
Yeah.
chance to actually effectively make some change here, and you know what? Like, I mean, I know we keep saying that on the show, but I don't care at this point. We have a chance to actually make some change, and this feels like the best way. This feels like the best way to strike.
No, I could not agree more with this. And my last point here on the show before we start to wrap things up is that one thing too that I want to see going forward for the next time there is the World Cup or these kind of tournaments in North America is
Mm-hmm.
we gotta get lower ticket prices. Holy smokes!
Oh my God, I'm not. I mean, yesterday kind of somewhat justified it, but like I am not paying $4 for a nosebleed at the Bell Center just to watch the Maple Leaf and the Stars and Stripes go at it again. I refuse to do that.
Right?
I openly refuse to do that because it's like, why should I have to pay? Why should I have to make a car payment in order to watch a hockey game?
Ridiculous.
I don't know. My thing before before we wrap up, like a very touching thing, that's happening with USA Hockey. It's circulating on social media right now. They're doing I guess, Player of the Game award in the American locker room, where they have Johnny Gaudreau's jersey basically being handed to the Player of the Game, and
Mhm.
it's a very wholesome thing. Of course, like, obviously, our condolences out to the Gaudreau family for that drunken jackass in New Jersey who basically decided to run over two people, two prominent hockey players because he wanted to be famous for 15 minutes. I don't know, but like it's very touching to see, like like they had an actual jersey made for him with his last name on it, and like they're doing it for Johnny Hockey and everything, which is really really cool and really wholesome, despite the fact that like we don't rate the Americans right now, but like it humanizes everything. That said, I mean, like if Canada were doing something in the locker room the same way, just to galvanize the troops and find a way to come back and say like this is our national birthright, then like you gotta do the same thing.
No, but it is amazing to see the Americans do that. And I
Mm-hmm.
look at that and I think to myself, man, he should be here playing in this tournament.
He
Johnny
really
Hockey
should
should
be.
be he should be here on this roster, and I'm glad. I wrote about it before for AverySports.com, but I'm glad to see that the hockey world is not forgetting about the Goodrow family. I like seeing that a lot.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, ideally speaking, um, this should this whole tournament should be a thing going forward. You know, All Star like in between the Olympics and the World Cup, it's like All Star 1 year, Four Nations face off for next year, and it's like okay, if Russia can actually get their shit together, be like okay, hey, let's throw Russia into the mix
No,
because
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's the big question mark is if by 2028, what's things that look like. We don't know. Like we have no idea what it's gonna look like in 3 years. We have no clue. That's really the big question mark in terms of. I know the NHL said they want at least 8 teams in the tournament for the
Mm-hmm.
World Cup, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really question marks because again, Russia right there. And do we have enough NHL players for? It's gonna be an NHL only tournament. Do we have enough NHL players to have 8 separate countries? Because the league said we're not going to do any more Team North America or Team Europe. It's going to be 8 separate countries. So like
Yeah,
once you get past Czechia, it's really stretching it. You don't really have enough NHL roster players who are German, who are Austrian, or who are Slovenian.
because it's like you have a massive number of Russian players in there, and it's like you can't ignore it at this point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, in any event, like this is really something that we can definitely discuss at a later date. But I know we got to wrap things up here because we're having way too much fun. And like if I go on further, then like I'm just gonna start cussing, and then our editor's just gonna hate us. So let's just stop this right here. But of course, Avery, thank you very much for coming through today. Of course, as you're getting ready for the P-Dub takeover in Edmonton, just want to say thank you for coming through. And obviously, we'll chop it up again on our episode.
Yes, sir, it is.
Great. Well, anyways, folks, as always, we want to say thank you for letting us grace the space in between your head top. We will be back with another episode. Until then, catch us on the socials, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, at Toronto Third, and then get us wherever you get your podcast from. This is your boy Dave signing off on this lovely day. If you're out shoveling, please make sure you take a break, make sure you drink enough water, and until next time, deuces.